What do people mean? What do people mean by presence? My cat has joined us. What do people mean by presence? I didn't really understand what that meant until there was a ceremony that I took part in, that I helped to create for a friend of mine. And this ceremony, it was transformational for me, like nothing else. And part of that ceremony, it was involving psychedelics. Part of that ceremony was this moment when I was getting overwhelmed, just overwhelmed by reality, by the intensity of the experience. And what happened, there was this moment in which, almost like an atomic blast in my mind, destroyed, really wiped away, not just like a blast wipes away trees and buildings, but really like a kind of bomb that wraps the dimension of reality in on itself and just contains it. And what was left after this blast was this sphere. Just this sphere floating on a completely white plane. White sphere, white plane, completely clear. And I blinked and I looked around. This was in my mind. That's what it felt like. I looked around and it felt like the psychedelics were gone. It felt like all of the effects of the psychedelics had just suddenly disappeared. I was just normal again, in my usual state of consciousness, was what it felt like. And I was like, well, that's fascinating. Except I was so totally present and clear. And the thing that I compared it to was like, I used to like Dragon Ball Z, growing up as a kid. It was like going Super Saiyan. I know it sounds silly, but that's the first thing that came to mind. I felt like I had reached a new level of consciousness. And then I kept on going with the ceremony, and then before long, the same thing would start to happen, this overwhelming of energy, of thought, of feeling. And as I was overwhelmed, the same thing happened again, this blast in which my consciousness wrapped in on itself. And I had this ball floating on this plane. That was what it felt like in my mind. It felt like my consciousness, the change my consciousness had just gone through. And this kept on happening again and again. And every time that it did, I would blink, I would look around, and I'd be back to normal, but at a higher state of normal. Like I was just going up the levels of Super Saiyan, up the levels of consciousness. And I'm using this old TV show for to describe this, but really that TV show is a metaphor for the kinds of ways in which we progress through consciousness. It's based a lot on Chinese mythology and ideas about spiritual forces. So it's all wisdom. Wisdom can be found anywhere, I guess is what I'm saying. And this is the way that I just happened to understand this experience I was having in the moment. And I found that after the ceremony was over, I could still do this. It was the way that I also described it. It was an ego death, where the forest, the landscape of my mind that I was in before, when it was destroyed and was wrapped in on itself and contained, it was like my ego had died, had been wiped away, obliterated, and all I was left with was just the experience of what I felt and smelled and saw and felt, inside. And wow. When all of that gets cleared away, you're suddenly clear to be a channel, to let whatever it is that needs to flow through you. Whether that's love, whether that's light, whatever it is that is coming through you, when your mind is wiped away. What a relief. And with what ease. How easy it becomes to just be there with another person, to love someone else and say, oh, are you struggling with this? Oh, man. Tell me about it. And to look at anything that you're struggling, anything that's, was supposedly a difficulty in my life. When this happened during the ceremony, and when this happens now, when I do this now, suddenly, I just, I look around and I'm like, well, this feels an awful lot like paradise. There's nothing really bothering me right now. I'm not in anguish. I'm not in pain. I'm not particularly hungry or sleep deprived. And even if I was, those things are just experiences. They're just feelings. And it's just our judgments about our circumstances. The worry that I was holding in my mind, that's what really was causing me so much trouble. The fear of pain. And so, I guess this also relates to presence. Presence relates to no self. This notion in Buddhism, most people are most familiar with it as a concept in Buddhism, that there is no I. But you can find the same principle, the same insight in traditions around the world. Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, Sikhism, and this notion of no self. It really becomes a lot easier to understand. When you allow your mind to be wiped away, blown away, contained, wrapped into itself, as if into, an inner dimension. And you realize that it's just so much easier to realize, so much easier to know and feel and experience this sense of I disappearing. The sense of boundary between you and another person, you and the world, disappears. You just are. It just is. Here we are. So, in doing this, I'll be honest, I haven't really had much practice teaching this yet to anyone. I haven't even really spoken about this very much. And so I don't know if this is the right way to go about presenting it, but I'm just going to speak about my own experience. And the way that I do this thing, I called it the ego death trick. It felt like a trick in the moment, and it feels like a trick now. Almost like a cheat code. It's just whatever your mind, whatever you are thinking about, experiencing, your consciousness as you feel it right now. If you were to drop this psychic bomb into the center of your mind and and wrap consciousness into this ball, like it is now, you have now like taken your dimension, destroyed it, and now are in a higher dimension. That is the feeling. And I guess it's hard to understand unless you do it, unless you actually stop and try. And when you enter this higher dimension, you're no longer struggling with these thoughts. You're no longer being interrupted by them, or fighting with your shadow, or judgments or difficult feelings. You have literally moved to a different plane of existence, as if like all of that was in another geometry, another landscape, and that landscape is not so much below you anymore. You can think of it as below you, but it's really just wrapped up in this and contained. And what you're left with is this vast clarity, this vast openness. And it's not that this will necessarily last forever. It doesn't. I know that. Because I will catch myself, I've got all of these thoughts and feelings and stuff crowding in again. And when it does, I just... and it just goes quiet again. And when we're clear like this, we become a perfectly clear channel for love to flow. For the entire universe flowing through us like a pipe. Like, we are a container, we are this gate, and just the universe is pouring in through it and then pouring out the other end. And the only way to do this without being overwhelmed by the entirety of everything, by infinity rushing through you and out of you at the same time, is to be completely empty. To have absolutely no resistance. As soon as you try to hold on, as soon as you try to grasp even a little bit, when that gate has a little bit of, like a little finger trying to hold on to some of it, a little tiny pinprick, suddenly we get instantly overwhelmed, because infinity, eternity, all of the universe rushing through, even a tiny atom that tries to hold on will be overwhelmed. Clear. A mind entirely clear. And when you're clear like that, when you're open like that, then the realization that you can be this source, this channel of absolute love, it becomes easy. Instead of being terrified of just the overwhelm, the of what it means to be a part of the universe, of everything, to be there for everyone, to enter into this God consciousness, Buddha consciousness, Christ consciousness, whatever it is you want to call it. It ceases to be frightening or terrifying. What's frightening or terrifying is if you try and hold on. If you resist, if your ego, your sense of self, resists the obliteration. And that's the hard part. And that's something that I, for many years of my own journey and my own practice, I think I knew that this was something that was possible. I think I almost knew that I could do it if I truly was willing to let go of everything and let myself be obliterated. But I was afraid. I think a lot of people are afraid. I think that's what keeps us from entering into a state like this. From feeling love purely and totally and absolutely. Because the ego, don't hate the ego. Don't demonize it. The ego tries to protect the heart. The ego tries to protect the soul. It is a way to interact with a world that is hard and harsh and painful. And it's a very, very wise, little witty defense mechanism. And yet, we need to learn how to die. The ego needs to learn how to die. Not just once, but again and again. And when we are not only willing but able to enter into this death, we are immediately, instantly reborn on the other side. We are free to love. We are free to laugh and be goofy and weird. We're free. And that's what enlightenment is. It's not magic powers, and it's not omniscience, and it's not having great reveries and revelations and talking to God. It's being free. That's it. And when you're free, really free, well, you are God. And you know that because everywhere you look, you see God. Because this is God. And my cat is God. And I am God too. And so are you. And so when somebody asks me, do you believe in God? I say, well, of course. You're right here. Gandhi says, if you can't see God in the next person that you meet, stop looking. That was a challenging thing for me to think about, to reckon with. I tried before from a place of ego and from a place of trying to see God in somebody else that I really didn't like, somebody I really didn't respect. Not just one person, maybe many different people like this. It was hard. But when you are willing and able to obliterate your mind, to obliterate, rather, your ego, you're able to see God everywhere. I know that a lot of people worry about something like this. You might be worrying, well, will I go insane? And the honest answer is yes. It is insanity. It is. It is insanity. But the question of whether you, there's that old quote, the mystic, the psychotic drowns in the same waters that in which the mystic swims with delight. I think the difference between going crazy and being overwhelmed and going crazy and loving and being a source and a channel of love is really that. Love. Because I honestly and truly believe and know from my own experience that if you enter into eternity, into this limitless expanse, if you do so trying to rationalize it, trying to hold on to it, trying to do it for yourself, and not coming from a place of love and pure openness, then you will be driven into madness. It's happened to me many a time. In psychedelic sessions, in ceremonies and journeys. And luckily I came back every time. Not everyone does. But the bulwark that you want in your ship as you sail out into the void is love. It's a quote from Sam Harris. And it's true. It's true. Love makes eternity bearable. Love makes madness bearable. And more than bearable, beautiful. And another question I think people might be wondering about or worried about, say, will I, if I lose my mind, if I blow up my mind, is that gonna, I don't want to be dumb. And, I don't want to lose all the knowledge that I've spent years and decades acquiring. Well, on one hand, you won't. You're not going to lose everything that you know and everything that you have acquired. You just won't have to try and remember it. It'll just come up naturally whenever you need it, in the exact moment that you need it. You just don't have to manage your memory banks. You don't have to try and remember. So it makes things a lot easier. But also, to be honest, you'll get simpler. You will get simple-minded. And what a good thing that is. Because really, that's what we want. We don't know that we want that, maybe, but that's what we want. We want to be simple-minded. That's what I've been talking about this whole time. It is being simple-minded. To be open, to be free, to be totally present, to be totally in love with whatever and whoever is in front of you. And of course, our ego doesn't like that. Our ego is like, no, 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 no. I'm a sophisticated, intellectual, intelligent person. I am not simple-minded. Or at least that's what my ego was all about. And yeah, it's a funny thing when you come from this place. You don't come off as smart necessarily. I was talking to a good friend of mine, and he's very smart, PhD, runs a magazine, and we were leaving the bar together after having a few milkshakes, and he says, "Yeah, you're very smart," and then he stopped and he said, "No, you're not. I don't know if you're smart, but you're wise." And I said, well, I'd rather be that. And it's true. I'd rather be wise than smart any day. And there's a lot of traditions. Judaism, in particular, the Kabbalistic mystical branch, that really prizes simple-mindedness, knowing nothing. The Zohar, one of the central mystical texts of the Kabbalah. A lot of it is, these stories of these rabbis or these students of Judaism, of the Kabbalah, just trompsing around the Spanish countryside. I believe it's Spanish, finding peasants and farmers and innkeepers. And just marveling at the wisdom, at the wisdom that they find in these humble, unassuming individuals. All of the knowledge and the smarts and the wittiness that we cram into our heads. And I've crammed in a lot, believe me. It doesn't hold up a candle to a mind that is clear and a heart that is open. And I have met people that have very little schooling, but I can tell right away that they are immensely intelligent. And not just intelligent in the standard way. I mean intelligent in the way a wise person is intelligent. I see wisdom. And I've met people with many degrees, very knowledgeable, no wisdom. So I urge you to try it. Maybe you'll find a different way to it. Maybe the images that I use that resonate with me aren't the ones that resonate with you. Find another way. Find another way to it. But I urge you to try, even for a moment, to eradicate your mind. Blow it so not just into ruins, but into a subdimension. And just see what that feels like. Just look around. The world as well as your mind. And just see what that feels like. And know that you can do that at any moment and at any point. Release yourself from the prison of your personality, the prison of your ego, of your I, of yourself. And when you do that, you'll be free to be anyone, to be anything. And if that's not a description of God, then I don't know what is.